What's the craziest crime you or somebody in your family has committed? My father, when I was still very young, used a fake name and pretended to be a wedding planner for a young couple. That young couple hired him since he seemed trustworthy and is an excellent liar, giving him access to their savings for wedding supplies and such that would be needed. Instead, he stole all of the money out of their account and then ran away with it. As far as I'm aware, he was never caught and the money was never returned to them. The worst part is that the poor couple never even got their wedding and had almost nothing left afterwards. My father committed one of the first computer crimes in the 90s. A ton of files were corrupted due to a code he created. Because they fired him, FBI invaded our home and arrested him. Was sent to federal prison for 4 years. Which was interesting because there was never a crime committed of its nature before. They made a forensics file episode about it. Edit, if anyone is curious. The company was Omega. In college we got a new printer and printed off a bunch of fairly convincing $20 bills, roughed them up, and used them at a bunch of fast food restaurants. Didn't realize how dumb it was until years later. My dad's cousin erased all family member names from a property deed except for his father's. The paperwork had been water damaged, so there was no easy way to tell what should have been there. Family law says that he also paid off some local politicians / office workers to make the new deed stand. My wife's cousin was arrested for the manufacturing of meth 3 times and was sentenced to life. His mom and dad all cooked meth and supplied basically the entire area. The worst part is that during his last arrest he was taking the fall for his parents. They were in large part why our small sleazy little trash heap of a town was one of the top 5 for meth in the United States at the time. A distant cousin got her terminally ill father to give her power of attorney and then stole all of his money so she wouldn't have to split it with her brother. Edit, don't worry. She did go to jail as a rush to clean him out involved a lot of fraud and forgery. Edit 2, man. It is slightly depressing. How many of you have similar stories? What's up with people? He's dead now, but years ago my relative got in a bar fight and lost, so he went to his vehicle to get his rifle. Fortunately the police arrested him on the way into the bar, so his charges were a lot less. Still did jail time. My uncle sold Tim Allen the cocaine that got him sent to prison in the late 70s. So did Tim rat out your uncle? Sure did. Then my uncle ratted out others. I honestly don't know much about it beyond that. Don't have much contact with that part of the family. My uncle was a pathological liar and a very troubled guy. He died by suicide about 10 years ago. My grandfather's cousin stabbed a waiter to death because he wouldn't let him use the employees only restroom in his restaurant. When I was a young teen, the boys from the neighborhood and I loved playing pinball and video games at our local bowling alley. Problem was we didn't have enough money to enjoy our new addiction. We decided to do something about that little problem. We started with a very rudimentary system. We actually scotch taped a piece of thread to a quarter and were able to fish it up and down a couple times before the string would break or the tape would give out. This worked fairly well, but we wanted and needed more. Our next plan was a little more professional. We somehow concocted a scheme to make quarters. A few lessons in science class had actually stuck, and we realized that we needed something to fool the coin mechanism in the pinball machine into thinking that whatever it was we made our quarters with was an actual quarter. We ended up deciding that lead would be our material of choice. We used lead for a couple of reasons. A couple of the guy's father was an avid hunter. He even reloaded his own shotgun shells. Because of this he had a burner set up in his shop to melt down lead. Another reason is that lead is not magnetic. Science. Close bracket. We made a mold out of plaster and used the burner to melt lead to make our quarters. But where to get more lead? Question mark. One of us came up with the brilliant thought that tire weights were made of lead. Carrying screwdrivers and pliers we scoured the parking lots of shopping centers. We would wander through and drop down out of sight between cars. Using the tools we had brought we would manage to get the tire weights off with little trouble. We were in business. Our production line was soon up and running. We would melt lead, pour it into our mold, cool it and then move on to finishing our new quarter. The finishing process was crude, but effective. We would snip off the burr where the lead was poured. We would then file down the edge, making sure it stayed mostly round. Using steel wool and a polishing cloth, we would then shine the quarters. Now came the trial run. We went to the bowling alley with a few quarters to see if our harebrained scheme would actually work. In they went, and the pinball machine lit up and was ready to be played. Success. We intensified our production and soon we had bunches of quarters. We were thrilled. We could play video games anytime we wanted. Every day after school you'd find us at the bowling alley, happily playing our games. But our downfall was soon to come. We never thought of the fact that someone might notice a bunch of fake quarters being used in their video games and pinball machines. It literally never crossed our early teenaged minds. We just knew we were having a blast. One fateful day we went to the bowling alley as usual. We started playing games and soon some men approached us. They started questioning us and accusing us. We were scared to death. One of the guys yelled "run," and we took off as fast as we could. We made it to the doors and down the steps we went. We all lived on the same cul-de-sac and that's the direction we headed. Running as fast as we could, we briefly split up. The men that were chasing us only followed one of us kids. He made the colossal mistake of running straight to his house and through the front door. From there our crime spree ended. A few days later I was in class when I was called to the office. When I got there my father was sitting with a man I'd never seen before. He was wearing a black suit with a black tie. I had to go before the principal, my father and a member of the United States Secret Service. Although they take the counterfeiting of US currency very seriously, they understood that it was just a bunch of knucklehead kids making quarters to play video games. He actually told me that he was impressed with the quality of the quarters. He also said that they had recovered over $75 in fake quarters. We had made and used over 300 quarters. We had to make restitution for the money and the charge was placed on our juvenile records. It was explained to us that if we kept our noses clean the charge would be expunged. Luckily for me I learned my lesson and stayed on the straight and narrow for the rest of my young adult life. And that, fellow Redditors, is how I was charged with counterfeiting US currency. If that doesn't define the meaning of a crazy crime, I don't know what would. My friend got blackout drunk and stole a bulldozer that had the keys left in it. He turned it on and obviously didn't know how to drive it, so he just ended up making the scoopy part go up and down for a bit before the cops came. They actually let him go too. My husband's dad killed the guy who his then girlfriend was cheating on him with. He was supposed to serve a life term, but got out because of a clerical error. He did manual labor on a local park and apparently the guys who helped were supposed to get a reduced sentence. However, he was not supposed to. I think my husband talked about it once. Also, my husband's half brother, same murderous dad, killed his business partner. He would have gotten away with it, however. He moved the body when he found out construction was going to start in that spot. And what were they going to build there? A prison. He's currently serving a life sentence. My husband has never met his half brother. He also has two half sisters from the same dad who are law-abiding citizens. I worked at a movie theater when Back to the Future was originally released. We used to take the entire movie ticket instead of tearing them and resell them to the next group coming in. The old theater was massive. Sat 600 people. We probably made about $15k between two of us in month or so. Adjusted for inflation, it's about $37k. We were the richest high school kids in our town. My grandpa wouldn't obey the train warnings. He would try and beat the train rather than wait. First time he got hit in his new convertible on the way to prom with my grandma. Had barely started on the payments and car was totaled. Luckily they were both okay. Second time was a little less reckless but still dumb. He was driving a semi and it broke down on the tracks. He kept trying to get the tractor trailer to start rather than lose his rig and load. Semi got hit by the train. Total loss and ducked up his back. An uncle robbed a bank or was an accessory to the robbers. IDK. His brilliant escape when the police showed up was to go to the roof and jump off. He didn't do time. Just had to go to the hospital for a broken leg. I'll have to ask my mom when I get a chance. She knows the story better than I do. Cousin got busted robbing a bank. Got sentenced to jail. proceeded to break out of jail with his cellmate, and went on the run. Fast forward a few months and he's living in a hotel room with his cellmate. Cellmate orders a pizza to the room. Bad idea. Delivery guy recognized them and reported them to the police. They get arrested again, and shortly after my cousin killed himself in prison. My cousin had a wife and a kid and got into a nasty coke habit. We don't bring him up anymore. This was a couple of generations back, early 20th century, but there was this guy who was constantly getting drunk and harassing my great aunt. So, one of her male friends dressed up in an Easter bunny outfit, put a bat in its giant fake carrot, and beat the dude with it. He got away with it, but I'm sure it helped that half the community was waiting for the day the guy's liver finally gave out. Edit. Okay. One small clarification. The bat in question was a baseball bat, not the flying mammal, though that's certainly an interesting visual, and I can't say I'm sorry for my small role in creating that image. Donnie Dark at his ass. Have a fucking carrot. My dad told me he once snuck into a tire warehouse. He cut the alarm and came in through a window on the roof and stole a bunch of tires. Not sure if it should be considered a crime, but one of my great aunts was in an abusive marriage with a war vet who took to beating her and forcing her to play Russian roulette when he drank. One night she managed to rig the gun so when he took his turn he blew his brains out. She wasn't charged. My dad got into a bar fight around 21 or so, hit a guy so hard he killed him. He went to prison of course, but while working along the road he stopped another prisoner that attacked a guard and tried to escape. My dad was released for that. He never drank after that, and if he got angry he just walked out of the house to cool off. He turned 81 a week ago and has the nicest, easiest going guy you would ever meet. He never judges anyone. He once said to me, "We all make mistakes." For the record, I only heard the story about tennis ago from my brother. He told him during a road trip. He lived in a small town and I have no idea what prison he was at or the official reason he was released, but considering it was probably around 61 over 62, they probably used whatever reason they wanted to for his release. My mom's father was a Vietnam vet. He married my grandma he met while in Germany, adopted her oldest son, and they had 3 daughters. He physically, emotionally, and sexually abused all of them when they were toddlers. He'd wake them up at 5 AM for PT, like basic training for adults. When they walked into a room he was in, he'd throw knives at them to check their reflexes. When my aunt graduated high school, she moved out, and he lost his mind. He kept trying to convince her to move back in, and actually convinced her to come home to talk about it. That day she was sitting on the couch, and told him she would never come back. So, he pulled a gun, shot her 3 times. Once in the hand as she was trying to block her heart, once in the stomach as she stood up, and once in the ass as she turned to run. Then he walked to his back bedroom and shot himself twice, once in the heart and once in the head. I wasn't alive, but I read the newspaper article and it was horrible. Side note, my family is really messed up. BC my grandma would take us grandkids to his gravesite and tell us what a great man he was. Edit, my aunt survived. Sorry y'all! Exclamation mark. Please subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed this video and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe.